Hey, everybody. This is your host, Nevin Gusak of the Populist Patriot. I got a couple of live streams I'm doing today. The first one I wanted to discuss, as some of you who know me personally are aware, I enjoy dystopian fiction or fictional works, movies, and series about dystopias, which are societies that are built on utopian promises but end up being highly authoritarian, if not totalitarian, dictatorships. So, one of the shows that I've watched is The Handmaid's Tale. And the fifth season is going to be premiering on Hulu September 14th, and I'm excited to watch it. No question about it, like many other people there, because I'm kind of a political science historical geek. I mean, otherwise, I wouldn't be doing a YouTube channel on politics and history and economics. So there's this common view. Handmaid's Tale was a book written by Margaret Atwood, Canadian feminist left author, 1985. It's a very good read. And it was made into a movie with Natasha Richardson and Victoria Tennant and Elizabeth McGovern and Robert Duvall and oh gosh, I forget his the gentleman who played I think was it Michael Perry? I don't know. A whole bunch of well-known actors and actresses. It was in that movie. The Handmaid's Tale was made into a movie in 1990, which I own. Good movie. And I also have the script, the original script, in a PDF format for the 1990 movie. And I'm currently watching, subscribed to Hulu. I have for a few years, and watching the Handmaid's Tale season. Now, many people, especially with the majority decision of the Supreme Court and the movement of the Republican Party in a quote unquote pro-life direction, really for decades, people are thinking, because the Republican Party is highly, highly critical of LGBTQ plus people, racial minorities, they're anti-abortion, they're completely anti-feminist and whatnot. So people are saying, well, the United States is going to be like the Republic of Gilead. And the Republic of Gilead is a fictional country that arose from the ashes of a collapsed United States, where you had infiltrators from a group called a theocratic organization. It's a sort of very weird branch of Christianity, of the Sons of Jacob. That's what that paramilitary political nonprofit organization was. That's what I'm, between the show, the book, and the movie, this is what I'm able to gather, that the Sons of Jacob was a nonprofit political group. It seemed like it had a lot of fronts within the United States before it took over and they assassinated the Congress, the Supreme Court, the president, etc. They had employment centers, they had youth outreach, they had people reaching the gangs and trying to turn them over. And the United States was fraught with clearly tremendous inequality, which we're experiencing, falling birth rates, which we are experiencing because we have such an anti-natal economic policy, which is supported by a lot of these self-styled pro-life people, by the way. And the Sons of Jacob take power after a massacre that was blamed on Islamic terrorists. And they create a totalitarian dictatorship. One of the biggest differences with the so-called Christian right in this country, most of the Christian right have these sort of Tea Party libertarian, Ayn Rand, let's get the government out of the way of capitalism. They link this perversion of Protestantism. If you look at, for example, the Reverend Conwell, and others, William Lloyd Garrison, these different theorists of social Darwinism. And they believe that the rich are ordained by God. Now, with the Sons of Jacob and the Republic of Gilead, Number one, all political liberties are suppressed, which is not something that I believe even the most right wing of conservatives would really go for. Not that level of scientific control. What the right wing of the conservative movement, the Reaganites, want is the Gilded Age back. That's what they want. Grover Norquist even has reputedly says that minus the tariffs, the high protective tariffs, which I support on this show, he wants the McKinley era absent the high tariffs. That's what Grover Norquist, who is the exemplar of this Reaganite fusionism, wants. The Republic of Gilead was more of a largely nationalized economy where I suspect a number of the nonprofits that the sons of Jacob had pre-Gilead became the new government. Very similar in the Islamic Republic of Iran, where you had these powerful government-tied foundations like the Banyad Foundation and other, which would basically served as quasi-public agencies for all intents and purposes. Now, you're probably thinking, well, do I have any proof? Well, yes. Number one, capitalism is largely absent in the Republic of Gilead. The old brands that existed within the United States are gone. You have stores, food stores called Loaves and Fishes, amongst other names. They were just names of food products, essentially. Very similar to what existed in the Soviet bloc, back in the day. You did have international trade, but again, that was a state-controlled activity, clearly. All the equipment, cars, when you look at the show, The Handmaid's Tale on Hulu, everything is marked with the logo of the Republic of Gilead, down to the bras, the clothes, the label, which strongly indicates that there is definitely a nationalized economy. They also severely control carbon emissions. It's a decarbonized economy. And much of the conservative Reagan Tea Party right, they're very pro-fossil fuel. They're very protective of the oil companies, the oil multinationals. Clearly, Gilead decarbonized the economy by force, largely decarbonized. I mean, yes, you had automobiles to a lesser degree. You had military vehicles, meaning for the Guardians of the Faithful, which was the paramilitary force in Gilead that fought the battles against remnant American forces and other rebel groups within Gilead. Several of the characters in the movie, in the book, and in the series also give a sort of whiff of viewpoints that would not be encountered within the Republican Party, even amongst the religious right. Religious right, again, merges the strong belief in laissez-faire capitalism and dog-eat-dog free market economics with that of religious piety and, strongly socially conservative practices and customs. In Gilead, you had people like Commander Joseph Lawrence, played by Bradley Whitford in the series. And it seems like there's a strong indication he was a professor. He was the architect of Gilead's economy, according to Aunt Lydia. And he had books on his bookshelf that he authored, including Problematic Populism, and also Constructing a Mercantile Economy, meaning a mercantilist economy. You have Commander Andrew Price, who actually said in the series, and this is when he was recruiting a member, a disaffected, an understandably disaffected American, to the sons of Jacob. He said, it's hard making it in a society that only cares about profit and pleasure, No wonder God has turned his back on us. And the person he was talking to was a character by the name of Nick. And Nick, who later became a commander, a young commander, well, his father, Nick's father, Nick recounted how his father lived on the edges. He steel mill he worked at closed down. He was living off a trimmed down pension, had family issues. And I would argue this is a consequence of neoliberalism, of Reaganism. You have the movie The Handmaid's Tale, where you have the commander saying to the handmaid, Offred, in the movie her name is Kate, he's like, we didn't create the pollution. We didn't manipulate genes and nukes. We didn't destroy the planet, but we will save whatever we can. If we have to shoot a few people, isolate a number of others, suspend credit and plastic, meaning credit cards and bank loans, so be it. He also said, he was describing his background during his professional background when the United States existed and when he was a member of the Sons of Jacob before it took over. The commander was like, I was in market research to start with. Then I branched out, became a sort of scientist. Then the guys made their move and they asked me to go in with them. The country was crazy. Nobody felt anything, men or women. They had itches, sex itches, money itches. Everything was cheap, opportunism all over. Nobody knew how to feel anything anymore. Men could make money, it's not enough. And sex was too easy. Anyone could just buy it. There was nothing to fight for, nothing to feel. Now, I'm not a fan of the Republic of Gilead, but is it really any surprise that a movement like the Sons of Jacobs and a fictional work like the Handmaid's Tale took over? And I think what needs to be discussed more than the gender chauvinism, the religious intolerance, and the anti-LGBTQ hate that, of course, is central in the Republic of Gilead, is how this kind of dictatorship clearly grew out of hyper-individualism. Remember, The Handmaid's Tale was written in the 1980s. This is when Reaganism was destroying the country's fabric and shitting all over the country. Closed steel mills, foreclosures of community banks, community farms, things that were going on before Reagan really started to be put on steroids. And people want direction. I mean, I have to tell you, I've moved away from the limited government conservatism. It's because I see around me my country dying. And many of the deregulatory reforms, labor reforms, everything that the right wing wants to restore a plutocratic society where basically your worth is measured upon your quote entrepreneurialism and your ability to make money, and that the moneyed people are often the better people. This is where people are going to say, look, we love our country more, we love our people more. And you're going to have also the highly corrupt, the highly totalitarian, the politically sociopathic or psychopathic elements that will also join these movements and will create these movements in order to fulfill their own desires for power. A combination of remaking a society combined with being corrupted by total and absolute unaccountable power, which we oppose. This is why we oppose fascism, National Socialism, communism, Republic of Gileadism. We oppose that. But there are legitimate reasons why these societies come about. And this is what I'm trying to, one of the several projects of this show, as far as I'm concerned, is to disillusion the right away from Reaganism, to get people a sort of I don't want to call it a conservative view, but it's not an overly leftist view, where I'm an anti-communist, I'm pro-America, and all the rest of it, to get people to show that the right wing that is in power, the type of Reaganism, whether soft or hard Reaganism, whether it's the Bill Clintons, the Bushes, the Trumps, the Obamas, the Reagans, even the last years of Carter, this sort of path to market liberalism has been an unmitigated disaster, both in culture, but especially in economics and politics. Does anybody really believe anything anymore? I think people are just trying to survive. Birth rates are down, just like as portrayed in The Handmaid's Tale. Birth rates are down. Abortion continues. But the way to reverse this is not to strike down Roe v. Wade, in my opinion. No, that should be like the bottom of the heap. First thing is you need to create an economic system that is pro-natal. Otherwise, you're going to have a situation where only the rich will be able to, or the upper middle class and the wealthy and all shades of the wealthy are going to be able to procreate. No, thank you. I don't want an America like that. And I think many of you don't, unless you're some diehard Randian or advocate of a stalwart boomer fusionist or something or another. And then probably by now, you probably would have unsubscribed from my channel because I'm clearly not some boomer fusionist Reaganite. And I'm not a libertarian or a Randian or Milton Friedman or Ludwig von Mises kind of guy. It's just not me. So I want to show you and make the case that the Republic of Gilead, as portrayed in The Handmaid's Tale, is not the logical conclusion of the conservative right in this country. No. And it's because, number one, the political system is not a plutocracy. It's a sort of theocratic hybrid of socialism or a fascism of some sort. It's almost like a Bolshevik economy where the state owned all the enterprises, either directly or indirectly. Where I suspect these nonprofits that existed in the United States when the Sons of Jacob was this sort of nonprofit organization, political action group, that's what I think is what happened, really. You had a state-controlled economy or state-owned economy. You had much more scientific control of society than even the plutocratic oligarchic right in this country would support. And the Republic of Gilead and the Sons of Jacob hated classical political and economic liberalism. It's very clear in the nature of society. It's clear from the quotes that I read to you tonight. It is a different political tradition. The closest thing in American history I could describe it, and I mentioned this a few years back on a Handmaid's Tale Facebook group, and I said that the closest thing politically that the Handmaid's Tale, the Republic of Gilead, would be in American history is the early Puritan Republic, the Massachusetts Commonwealth under the Puritans, where, as Murray Rothbard, who generally is somebody I don't like or agree with, but he brought out a very interesting point, where you had severe controls of the economy, collectivization, and you had price controls, wage controls, and everything else. And I think even in the script for the Handmaid's Tale movie in 1990, there were indications that Gilead hailed and praised and preserved the Puritan Republic, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts during the early colonial era of the English colonies pre-US period. So the bottom line is they have nothing to do with the so-called constitutional conservatives. DeSantis would be considered an idiot by the Sons of Jacob in the Republic of Gilead. I mean, these people were dedicated to seizing power, to truly remaking society. I would argue in many ways, in all ways, really not a good way. And really abolishing much of what these limited government conservatives support. Because really, at the end of the day, the only thing that limited government conservatives support is just the preservation of the power and wealth of the private sector oligarchs. And there is no sign whatsoever in the Republic of Gilead that these oligarchs survived. If any of them survived, they probably fled to the parts of the United States that were not taken control by the Guardians of the Faithful, which was Gilead's armed forces, or they fled abroad to America's allies in Canada and Europe. Also, in the script, what was also interesting is when the commander and Offred, his handmaid, went to Jezebel's, which is a club where all kinds of debauchery was occurring, all kinds of, degenerate sexual activity between basically prostitutes in converted hotels that were put in converted hotels. And that's where the commanders and other high-level officials met Gilead's trade delegations from Japan, from the Arab world. In the book, they talked about meeting trade delegations from Russia. In the movie, they talk about, and the book, they talk about meeting delegations from Japan and the Arab world. But also, what was interesting is this movie was released in 1990, so that's when the Soviet Union still existed. So it says, the commander says also, the people from that were Gilead's allies were, quote, from Europe and Russia. Now, this movie was released in 1990 when Russia was still the Soviet Union, and some of the Soviet bloc countries, Albania, Yugoslavia, were still communist. And probably they started filming this movie in 1989 when much of the Soviet bloc in Eastern and Central Europe had existed. So what's telling me is even America, and in the book, Gilead signed a treaty of neutrality with the Soviet Union that recognized their spheres of influence too as well. So what this is telling me that Gilead also had ties with communist countries too as well. And that's not unusual for the Soviet Union. I mean, the Soviet Union has had, underground trade ties with apartheid South Africa, which was governed under the principles of a fascist-style Christian nationalism of the Afrikaner Nationalist Party. The Soviets backed the Islamic Revolution of Iran that occurred starting in February 1979. The Islamic Republic and the Soviets were a major trade partner and arms supplier and a supplier of all kinds of advisors and personnel to provide military assistance to the Iranians. I mean, the Soviets even had underground attempts at outreach to the Saudi Arabians under the guise of anti-colonialism and anti-Zionism. And the Soviets were already the Saudis were even providing loans to the Saudis were providing loans to the Soviets by 1990. They were then recycled into various communist parties throughout the world and their fund companies. So certainly communist countries can, go outside of their ideological comfort and cultivate allies throughout the world for a variety of different reasons, even if the one is totally governed by the principles of a religious theocracy like Iran or Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia also conglomerated with other foreign banks and countries and provided loans to Yugoslavia, East Germany, and Hungary during the 1980s, by the way. And, so I can list, opposites to some degree do attract. So that's why I don't think Republic of Gilead is this run-of-the-mill conservative operation. Clarence Thomas does not believe in the actual principles of Gilead. Because otherwise, if Clarence Thomas would not be supporting the program at the Federalist Society, all those people are all creatures of the Federalist Society, and they just want a plutocratic oligarchy. That's all they want. They want labor smashed. But the sons of Jacob, they want a different kind of oligarchy. They want a totalitarian United States of America, where the economy is controlled, the oligarchs' heads are basically literally and figuratively cut off, and basically you have a new ruling class. That's where you have all kinds of scientific control over the population. So I wanted to conclude this. So Handmaid's Tale, if you subscribe to Hulu, watch the show. It's really well done. The movie is available for purchase on YouTube, and you could also purchase the book from Amazon and read it not as really so much as a swipe against right wing social conservatism, and read it more as a new political phenomenon that occurred that rose its head during a fictional United States, and it's probably its last decade, and treat it as a symptom of a dying United States that was being murdered by hyper individualistic, atomistic culture, economics, and politics, much of which was brought on by the likes of Reagan and Carter and Mises and Milton Friedman and others, where senses of community and patriotism was being worn away, really whittled away. So, anyways, I saw there were up to 5 people listening. Thank you so much. I see we got 2 likes here. Thank you so much. I'm going to be doing a couple of more live streams, and I will be talking to all of you soon.